and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two friends compulsively study random facts of history that we cannot not study. And then we take a break from telling our husbands and children the factoids they have not asked to hear. They have asked not to hear. And then we direct it in one steady stream in verbal diarrhea at our friends. And you've tuned in. What is
You say that,
wrong
but
with you?
I think I feel like it's not always one steady stream for me. It's like the bursts of
Mm.
verbal diarrhea.
The burst. That's honestly, I'm
I give you a great
watching our
visual, didn't I?
listenership leave. They're closing the doors. They're shutting the lights off with us still in the room.
Well, that's your fault because you asked him what's wrong with him.
And here I thought it was the spurts of verbal diarrhea that did it.
Nope, not this time. Probably every other time though.
Now, I will say, speaking of diarrhea, when you you like that transition? So when I had sent you a gift and you had said that you were at work and I had told you it would be at your house and maybe you should shit your pants so that you could go home.
You did say that, and it made me laugh very loud.
But did you laugh hard enough to poo yourself so you could excuse
Well,
yourself?
so the funniest part of all of this is by the time I got that text, I was in the car on my way home. So I was like, I don't want to now. Like, I'm already almost there, only to find out that the post office shipped it back
I know, but you got it now.
halfway.
It is in your
I got
hands.
it.
You
It's
you
in my
showed it to
hands.
me. Okay. So now we're going to do the worst unwrapping that we can because this is a non-visual medium. So I will narrate. Reader or listener, Angie is
Dear listener,
Angie is shredding open the bubble mailer that I have put the package into, and she is
oh,
pulling out a wrapped thing because she has a birthday at some point. And so I used birthday wrapping with a
it's gorgeous.
fantastically pink bow.
It really is. It's outrageous. It's like big hair pink.
Yeah,
Like,
the higher the hair, the closer to God. So, but
yeah.
we're not here for the bow. You're not a cat. I didn't do this for Mavis. I did this for you.
I love that you know it would be Mavis that went after it. You rap like a monster. This is so perfect. I can't find a spot. There we go.
And here I was hoping that I would rap RAP like a monster. Instead, I have,
Take it however you want. I'm not telling you how to live your life.
yeah, homonyms, right? I'm going to be the whitest, most middle-aged white woman. And now she's displaying a box, just a nondescript box that says dollar bill frame. But for all she knows, it was reused. It's filled with native deodorant for all she knows. She has no idea.
No way. That's freaking amazing. This is going on the wall today.
Okay, so what is
As if
she?
she, as she...
She is displaying a $1, a very ornate, my favorite $1 bill frame with, now there was a second one tucked into the frame itself. There was a piece of paper tucked into the frame.
Okay, hold on. I must
She is displaying a um copy, a
multitask
replica
it.
of a script from Emperor Norton, the
Here
only
it is.
emperor of the United States. I found replicas of his money. And because I couldn't afford 5 grand for a single scrap of legitimate paper, I could afford somebody, printing it off and putting copy on the back of it. So you have one, I
This
have.
is the most baller dollar bill I have ever
Isn't that
seen.
an incredible thing?
There is so much script and his little picture wearing his uniform at the
hmm
top.
hmm And when
That's my
you
favorite part.
covered him, I had thought about it. And randomly, I was like, I'm going to look up and I'm going to see how much those are. I'm like, they got to be like Confederate dollars, right? I mean, I could spend $5. The last one I saw at auction went for 5 grand.
I believe it. We have Confederate money that held like value until 2010 when they found all the Confederate money in France. So now we just have it for fun.
Mm,
This is going on the wall like today. I am
good,
so excited about
good.
this.
Because I have one on the wall.
As you should, because Emperor Norton is our emperor.
He is our emperor now and forever.
Indeed. And we don't even have to wage a galactic battle for him. He just kind of showed up one day.
But I would.
Oh, in a heartbeat, I'd get him a fancy uniform and everything. This is love right here. You know you love a person when you buy them a dollar. Or to be
Right?
clear, a $5.
It's a $5 script. Let me look up and see what episode we did of Emperor Norton.
I don't feel like it was terribly long ago, and now my Saber Saint book is absolutely not nearly as cool as your dollar bill.
The Saber Saint book is good, but my notes are really bad. Um, because the only emperor I have is the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II, who fought and lost himself. So let me write Norton. Ah, Joshua Abraham Norton. I'm going to put emperor
He's the
in here.
one.
Episode 41 for those playing at home. So if you want to
Yahtzee.
learn about America's once emperor, one and only emperor, episode 41. And that's where I cover the pirates Jean and Pierre Lafitte.
Ooh, our pirate boyfriends.
Oh,
Yeah. How do you not love them? You know?
honestly, I think 41 was an episode we peaked at. I'm gonna be honest. That seems like a really incredible like lineup right there.
Truly, like, you might not get, first of all, further away from each other.
Hmm.
And second of all, like, you can't get more charactery characters. Like, these are the men people write characters after.
Right. I mean, I would say that Jean and Pierre Lafitte, they are very chaotic good.
I would say the same thing about Emperor Norton.
Okay, so maybe okay, so when I took a linguistics class in my undergraduate, and my professor writes the words black and white on the board. She goes, "What are these?" We said opposites. She goes, "Are they?" We were like, "Yeah, no,
Hmm.
we know this. They're opposites." And she goes, "Well, what are they?"
We've
Well,
made
they're
it this far.
Yeah, I was like, "Look, I've been voting. I could serve jury duty. I've been paying taxes. I'm pretty sure those words are opposite." She goes, "Well, they're both words to describe color, right? Right? Do they describe shape? No, but they describe things, right? So they're both adjectives." Like she goes through the full thing. She goes, basically, they're exactly the same except in one regard. Because you go through like, oh, well, they describe these things, they do this, they do that, they
Right,
do
right,
all
right.
of these things together, and their paths only diverge at one point. And it was one of those
And
things.
that's shade?
Yeah, yeah, but it was just fascinating to go like, and that's where we think of them as opposites. Like, but they're not opposites in what it's not like apples to orangutans.
Right. They're opposites in what you wouldn't expect them to be opposites in.
Right.
I love it when you teach English.
I mean, she did everything she could just to screw with our little minds.
That's a sign of a good teacher as far as I'm concerned.
Or a maniac.
Or a little of both. Little column A, a little column B, both. Both is good.
Both is, you know what? You're right. You're right. Difference, not wrong.
Oh my goodness. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear my whole story?
Okay, because you had said, hey, I might have the full story. I might
I
really
have.
just do it all by myself and let you just rest on your laurels and do
Yeah,
absolutely bupkiss.
because I've got a doozy.
I mean, and to which the only thing I have to say is, look, this is a big ass margarita and it's not going to drink itself.
So I've chosen the right day for you to have a big ass margarita and for me to have a big ass story. Is that what I'm hearing?
Every time I hear like, big ass and everything, and I know I started it, I want to hyphenate it differently. Instead of saying big dash ass, I want it to be big ass margarita, ass story. So I want it to be a big story
Ye-
about asses.
There's some asses in my story,
And that,
not
dear reader, is
margaritas.
where we're starting.
This episode is brought to you by some assholes.
Promo code unhinged.
Get your vodka there online where you can buy it like a real adult without going to the store.
Anytime it can be delivered
Can you?
to you. Yeah, no, I've had whiskey delivered, but because you have to have an adult home, I had to have it delivered to work. And so I had two handles of sorghum whiskey delivered to my office, and questions were asked.
Mind your business.
What
That should have
happens
been your answer.
between consenting adults?
After
What?
5 p.m.
What? This is
Sorry.
weird. Go on.
Ugh. Right. So I would just like to preface my story that is if you're willing to hear my big ass story. Did I say it right?
No, you did. You did. I appreciate you adopting my,
I'm here for it.
yeah, I foisted it
Listen,
upon you.
the English language is pretty much just an adopted language, right? Like we're three kids in a trench coat
Hmm.
trying to cross the street. Like
Yep.
that's
Accurate.
yeah, so we can change it. No one's gonna notice.
Right? And there's less three
Yeah.
kids of trench coats doing anything these days. I feel like my childhood prepared me for more to be on the lookout for that. I'm not seeing it.
And quicksand. We don't deal with
Yes.
nearly enough quicksand.
I mean, and the amount of times I have not been offered drugs is astounding. Like I was prepared.
I was not prepared for you to say that. And I'm so glad I used the facilities before I sat down. Thanks for
Look,
that.
we did talk about soiling our pants earlier on, so I'm doing what I can to be consistent. But
Yeah.
anyhow, I want to know your story, your ass story.
Okay. My ass story. So, we are officially celebrating Women's History Month.
Hmm.
And so, in honor of that, I wanted to find a story that I knew nothing about. Like, I wanted to find a lady from history that did amazing things that I was completely like brand new to, because that seemed like for me a great way to go into it, right?
Okay. You want to be
Okay.
surprised and delighted.
And I was surprised and delighted. Marginally pissed off, but surprised and delighted as well.
Okay.
So, I have quite a lot of sources, but mostly I cited them simply because I didn't want to lose them, whether I use them or not. But the bulk of my source comes from worldhistory.org and the BBC. So those are what we're working with. And I'm going to start with a bit of poetry. Are you
Wait,
ready?
wait, wait. You're not going to actually name the sources that you just teased us that you had?
They are the BBC and
But you said a
worldhistory.org.
myriad, like several, like, but just,
Do you want other ones? I can
I
give you
mean, no, you
other
know what? You're
ones.
fine. You're fine. I'm done. I'm done being a persnickety little fart.
There's badassoftheweek.com if you must have that.
I'm
It
okay.
includes the word ass. So,
I'm here for it. See, thank you.
yeah,
We can move
you're
on now.
welcome.
I just
Okay.
need a little bit of
You
swearing.
needed that one.
Yeah.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. I have another one called teenqueens.org and the orthodoxchristian.com website, which I
One of
thought was
these things is not like the other.
you're right, it's not, but it was interesting nonetheless. So I'm going to start with a little bit of poetry because I thought it was amazing. It's just a short line. Lion whelps are equally lions, though female or male they be. This is an excerpt from The Knight in the Panther's Skin, which was written by Shota Rustavelli, a medieval Georgian author. I almost called him a creator because we live in today's world.
Right, you know,
Um,
an
it's
influencer,
six,
if you will.
yeah, an influencer. Exactly. It is 1600 stanzas long, and it is so influential to Georgian culture even today that there are people that still have the entire thing memorized,
Damn.
right? And it was written in the 13th century.
That is so. How long is Canterbury Tales? Because Canterbury Tales is
Oh
also
gosh.
written in about that
Yeah,
time
and
frame.
also very long too. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Now
We
I'm
don't need to do it right
curious.
now because I now I'm trying to
I'll
imagine
get back to
somebody
you on that.
remembering or memorizing the entire thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Like when I read that, I kind of just kind of stood there for a second with a blank look on my face. Like, that's 1600 stanzas. And I thought I was cool because I had the epilogue and the prologue for Romeo and Juliet memorized.
And here I am thinking, like, look, I got a monologue from Mission Impossible that just lives rent free in my brain.
Yeah, here we are. There are people that have so much more in there. But anyway, I
Yeah.
digress.
Carry on.
So, I will go back to that at the end though, because it holds such significant cultural status that it will be mentioned again later. So in 1166, King Georgi III and Queen Berdunkahan of Georgia,
The look on your face is so smug, and you are also
there's
prepared for me to call you out.
go ahead because there's some names in here that I spelled phonetically so I could hopefully say them again the right way. Born to them, the king and the queen of Georgia, is a sweet baby princess named Tamar. Now, the thing that is special about her is that she is his only child. First of all, she is his only, at this moment, his only living child, and then later, his only legitimate child.
Okay, so
So,
he figures it out with the maid.
yeah, a mistress of some sort. Um, and he proclaims that he's going to share the throne with his daughter from the day she turns 12 years old.
That's a bit
From the
young.
get. Yeah, but he's looking around. He's looking at the world, unlike King Viserys in House of the Dragon, and he's seeing what can come of not having a male heir, right? So at 12 years old, he has her crowned very publicly in front of both the aristocracy and the clergy, and he does this with intent to basically give her as many years as is the remainder of his life to learn the craft, and she serves as a surrogate in his place when he's not there. So like
Okay.
this is the best kind of, as far as I'm concerned, the best kind of kingly quote unquote education you can get because you start at 12 years old.
Well, and this is also
And
like what you said the 13th century?
so she was born in 1166. So right now we're in
1166.
the,
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah,
Um
okay. I'm honestly, this makes sense because how old would you be when they shipped you off to an apprenticeship? So you're one less mouth to feed and you can learn how the tanning hide.
Right? Or it at this point in time, how old are you when they ship you off to marry someone else? Right? In
If
in
it
most young
bleeds, it
ladies'
breeds.
cases, pretty much, right? So, like I said, he crowns her very publicly. And I'm just gonna get right into it. So part of the reason, as I said before, that he crowns her and he chooses her as his heir and makes it very apparent, lack of a pun, I love it, is that he had a nephew once,
Oh, the
but he meets an
past tense is
untimely death.
weird.
Yeah, well, you're gonna hear all about it. So I'm gonna give you the backstory. And here is where I was like, whoa, what a story. How did we not know about this? So King George, because we're Americans and Georgi is a fun word to say, but really hard on repeat. So he's the grandson of the eminent King David the Builder otherwise known as the Restorer, who was, according to
So wait, wait,
the
wait,
World
wait. I'm not letting you
Encyclopedia,
zip past that. I'm not letting you zip past that. Dave the Builder, not Bob the Builder.
you're right. We really blew it on that one.
I
And
wanted you to
also,
know I was listening.
I'm proud of you. I want you to know that while I was learning about this particular event in history or this particular time in history, how much of it reminded me of Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Bran the Builder, Dave the Builder, whatever.
I mean, I was
So,
thinking, can we build it? Yes, we can. Sorry, I'm a mom.
yeah,
These are
you're right.
things.
And he can and he will. So, according to the World Encyclopedia, he, quote, was the king of Georgia from 1089 to 1125. His long reign was marked by a substantial revival of medieval Georgia. He regained much of Georgia's lost territory and controlled a realm stretching from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea by his death. David's religious, military, and cultural reforms stabilized the domestic life in Georgia and established the monastery of Galenti in a major cultural center. So it's under this David that Georgia is unified for the first time in centuries. So another couple really interesting things to note about him and the next several rulers of this dynasty are that, first of all, his armies were so well commanded and so well trained that he had no problem taking on armies that were four times the size and emerging victorious. Like it
Damn.
wasn't, yeah, it was just a thing. Like they just did it. And both him and his son attended church and the mosque and spoke Arabic. So to
Whoa.
me, right, thinking of the area and the time frame, these are the way that in my imagination that he's running his country and the way that he's presenting himself is very super tolerant. Like he allowed people of religion, varying religion and different belief systems to be part of his country, but not only that, to be part of the body of that had a voice. So it wasn't just like, hey, I run this country, you're all Catholic, or hey, I run this country, you're all Greek Orthodox, whatever. Like he saw what it was and chose to find the happy medium. And I think that's so important to note, given that we are literally in the time of the Crusades. Like, that's important to think about, right? So George, or George, he inherits this throne and the strength and vitality, and he deals harshly with those that oppose the crown. One of the main themes of Tamar's father's reign was that he centralized royal power. He was not only feared, but he was respected by his subjects, and he would show priority to external political and military success of the Georgian kingdom, which not only brought him favor with the people, but he was known for bringing like lesser houses up and not allowing all the power to sit with the old aristocracy. Like he tried to
Oh.
like diversify, for lack of a better word. And I think that's super interesting. So so all that to mention that anyway, all that to say,
We're Team Yorgay. That's all I gotta say.
yeah, pretty much. And like I said, another thing about his predecessor, King David, is his reign is established as the sole supreme power in the Caucasus region. So like there was no one higher than him and then Gyorgy, right? However, Gyorgy did have well, Georgia in general has a pretty intense rivalry with the Muslim power groups in the Caucasus region, as well as their other Muslim neighbors in the Middle East. So King David's son and grandson would fight with their Muslim neighbors over control over the major of the cities in the Caucasus for most of their reign. Eventually, or ultimately, Georgia was successful in becoming the preeminent power in the region, and this ushers in an era of greatness for Georgia. Like, think Elizabeth I's Enlightenment. Like,
I am surprised you didn't call her Lizzie one.
I
As
considered
is,
it. I wanted to so bad.
I mean, because that I was just like, wait a minute, something's wrong here.
Lizzie won. My girl. That think of that type of like growth within your own cultural significance and your own history. Like
Yeah.
that is happening right now. Okay. So, however, no reign can be exempt from bad marks. And close to the end of his reign, George would face a pretty significant and heartbreaking problem in a rebellion. So, this is what Queen Tamar is growing up in. This is what she's seeing. And I know the stories about her, but without giving the backstory and placing her in the context, it doesn't seem fair to her story without knowing what the men brought upon her that she had to basically clean up.
Dude, I'm down.
Right? So, like I said, close to the end of his reign, he realizes we're going to enter into a rebellion, and it starts with the House of Orbelis, which had risen during the rule of King David, and so now we're working with like 60 years of loyal service to the crown. And also now we're organizing a rebellion against that crown we've been loyal to for 60 years. So Ivan Orabelli, he is the main conspirator against the crown, and he convinces King George's nephew, the young and very inexperienced Prince Demena. I think I pronounced that wrong, but it's Demna, and every time I hear it, I say it different. But it's another variation is Dimitri, so we could call it what you will. Um, Anywho, Ivan convinces him to join the rebellion, and he basically promises that after the rebels have overthrown the king, they're going to crown Demena, and he's going to be the sole ruler for the kingdom. So, like, you're young, you're gullible. Like,
I'm
okay,
gonna be king. Heck yeah, do what you will.
yeah, right? However, that wasn't the actual plan. The actual plan was quite different from what he told the young prince. He intended, Ivan, to take control of the country himself, using the prince just kind of as a puppet, like, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we see that kind of a lot with younger rulers in history, but and long story short, he doesn't make it. So Ivan and his supporters begin a rebellion in 1177. Some historians claim the rebellion actually occurred in 79, but let's say it began in 77. So nevertheless, King George, not being a weak ruler who would panic at the threat of mortal danger, immediately gathers his troops and unexpectedly attacks the fortress of Lori, which is in present-day Armenia. And all the rebels are garrisoned there. So these quick and aggressive measures taken by the king scare the pants off the rebels. And the rebellion immediately starts to unfurl and decline. And many of the rebels abandon Orebelli and Demina. And finally, when King George captures the remaining rebels, he pardons almost everyone. Because fairness, I guess. Or, still trying to maintain power in your presence kind of thing. Like he doesn't. So, long story short, he pardons everyone except Ivan Orabelli, his son Sumbat, and his brother Kavtar, who are all blinded and put to death.
Blinded
Oh,
first.
yeah. And then he orders the most intense punishment for his nephew. He is blinded, castrated, and soon afterwards dies in a dungeon.
Big mad.
You big mad. And apparently, according to some of the sources that I read, to blind and castrate someone was a pretty common occurrence during the Crusades, which I did not know. That was like brand new information for me. And now I have further questions, but that's not what this story's about.
Right.
Yeah. So there's your backstory. And after that really awkward Thanksgiving, Pop lives another 7 years and dies, believe it of all, of what appear to be like natural causes, old age or maybe some type of sickness. Of all the things, I really didn't see him going out of old age, but he
You
does.
you thought somebody was going to put some ground up glass in his food or something.
Well, after you're blinded and castrated your own nephew, I kind of maybe saw some revenge
You saw some
on
more
the.
Game of Thrones action.
I really did because the beginning of the story is so George R. R. Martin, right? Like, where's Cersei? Oh, I have an idea. Anyway, I'll get to her.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah,
Foreshadowing.
yeah, on accident. So March 27, 1184, Queen Tamar begins her solo monarchy, her solo reign. She's around 24 years old.
Not a bad age, you
One's
know.
not a bad age, right? Yeah. I mean,
And
and
you've been
she
training for it
served
since what, 12?
12. So she's been at this for 12 years. So we think with the numbers, right? Like we are talking about something that happened in the 1100s. So,
Are you saying that we just don't have solid written record?
well, part of the problem, and you'll see towards the end of my story, is that, well, first of all, I'll say this. She is one of the few powerful women in history whose story is romanticized in the right way. Like
Okay.
she is a treasured hero of her people. Whereas, you hear like when you think of most women in history, they're
Like
often ostracized.
Prendergast and Brunhild.
Right, right, right. So her story is told from the perspective of chronicles that like worshipped the ground she walked on. So we don't get a lot of like news from the other side, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
when thinking of her. So, all that to say, she's 24 years old. She becomes the sole ruler. Now, two interesting things about this. In Georgia, there has never been, up to this point, a sole female ruler. If you were the queen, quote unquote, and you would be the queen consort, and you would rule like regency after your husband died, right? Like, but never had there been someone that took the throne of their own. Like they didn't inherit it. They had no real ruling power until she came along. So there was no word for queen in their language,
Okay.
in that regard. So she is known both as a queen and a king, depending on the context and the language. Because as I said, she's the first woman to rule in her own right. And there are other words and words that come out of Persia and the Arabic language that refer to her as the Queen of Queens or Tamar the Great. Even by her contemporaries called her Tamar the Great. So I feel like that's really important because you hear a lot of the greats, but like when did they get that added on? You know?
Yeah, they weren't like
Um,
at the state dinner going, and I'm Tamar the Great. Frederick II, sit
right.
down. Sit down.
I said sit. And I have no problem believing that she would say that.
Okay.
So so like I said, so she's known as the King of Kings or the Queen of Queens or the Mepe, which is I think very similar to Romanian uh what's the word I'm looking for? Aristocratical titles, royal
I have to say,
titles.
look, I was there for a week. I don't necessarily remember, like, I didn't retain
The
the entire
the
language
ancient
and
word for
history.
king.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I
although
just thought that was
cute that you
interesting.
would assume that I would have that.
Well, it's a weird word, and it's one of those words, at least in to an American, to to remember that it stood out to me as something I remembered from somewhere else. I could be wrong on the whole thing, right? That's just something that popped in my brain right then. So you would like to believe that Queen Tamar takes her rule and has no opposition, right? But we know that men are gonna men, and this is not how history works. She is
Oh, damn.
immediately faced with opposition. Interestingly enough, one of the first rebellions that rises up during the beginning of her reign, she squashes by sending, and I think this is just fascinating to me. It's believed that she put down this rebellion simply by sending two women to negotiate it. These women were the wife and daughter of two of the men among the rebels. Ta-da! Problem solved. Like, wild that, democracy or diplomatic. ties work. Um, and the idea that I thought was really interesting about this, BBC specifically talks about that the idea of sending the two women comes from a deeper root based in Christianity with the belief that Georgia was first converted by one of the only female apostolic saints.
Oh,
Right. So like Tamar knows her history too. Like she not only is great at politics, but she can look back and be like, "Hey, actually women don't have a problem having power here." Like look at this story, right? Like so she's using that to her advantage clearly from the beginning. However, to her great disadvantage, the ruling nobles, we're dealing, right? She's this sole monarch, but all monarchies have an aristocracy that
yeah,
thinks they know better, barons and dukes and
right,
the whole bit,
yeah.
right? They demand that she marries. Now, for the most part, she concedes to a lot of their requests for the sake of, peaceful rule and peaceful transition and all of that. She is not so keen on marrying right yet, but she does. She's like, okay, here we are. I guess this is what we're doing. And they basically, against her will, because she has no desire, she doesn't know this guy, she has no desire to marry him. They pair her up with, are you ready for this name? I am so excited to say Prince Yuri Andreevich Bogolovsky.
Well done.
Thanks. Phonetics. He happens to be a Kievan Rus Duke in exile. Now, because I was curious, how does one just become a Kievan Rus Duke in exile? Well, that's because he was dethroned and expelled after the murder of his father in 1175.
That's
I'm
fairly
not sure if
noble.
he, right, I'm not sure if he had anything directly to do with that, but something tells me that when you are both dethroned and expelled, there's probably a little bit of patricide happening.
I
It's my
mean, you
guess.
say that, but I mean, you look at like Lord Mountbatten, Prince Philip.
Okay.
He was of Greek nobility, and
And
when they
right,
were ousted, then he fled.
right.
So we don't
Yeah,
accuse
but
him of often daddy dearest.
we know this Daddy Dearest was murdered.
Okay,
So
but we
there's
also
that.
know that that was in the 1100s.
Who
Like
could have
how
been
much of
anything,
this,
right?
yeah, like it could have been so many things.
And to be fair, I didn't look much past that because this story's not about him. It's about her.
And you're like, you know what? I want to think the worst about this man, so I
I
should just
really do
stop.
because he is not the best. He's not liked by the people. While he does have some skill intact on the battlefield, he is kind of a drunkard. He's abusive. He's unkind. Some believe he's homosexual, which you can assume at this point, at this place, at the amount of piety within their ruling party, that is highly um, not is highly frowned upon.
You know, if you're married
So,
to a queen, I could understand that maybe looking at the other gender with more lust than your wife could be bad. But I mean, also, yeah.
right. Now, the interesting thing about him is, how I mentioned earlier, she's not so into him. She doesn't want to marry him. She doesn't know him. But she is immediately curious. Like, why did the nobility choose him? Why did they choose a prince from Russia with such expediency and not, say, from like the royal family of the Byzantine Empire? Like,
Logical questions.
right, like what in the world is the thing with him, right? So, long story short, they get a divorce after 2 years, and she sends him packing to
A
Constantinople.
divorce.
Yes, okay, so here's
Wow.
the thing.
Okay, give
Not
me the
only
tea.
is she the queen, but she is in great standing with the church in her area. So the bishop, like the Catholic bishop, and the ruling like Orthodox Christians are like, yeah, okay, do the thing. He's not following the law, whatever. So yeah, go for it. And they totally sign off on it. So she sends him like a severance package and kicks him off to Constantinople. And I think that's just hilarious. Like, here's your alimony, kick rocks, peace out. However, he did not, in fact, peace out. He did not approve of this and attempted a couple of coups.
Mm.
She, however, crushed them and sent him packing again. Now, coincidentally, the one. So I forgot to mention this. In Georgia, the Catholics are called Catholicos. And I think that's really funny. But the
Kind of like a calico.
Catholico, yeah, that's what I kept thinking too. The Calico bishop, he
You just
basically
said
serves,
calico bishop.
yeah, I did, didn't I? The
The
Catholico
cutest
bishop,
bishop.
the Catholico bishop is the chief bishop and also serves as a prime minister. He is kind of the only person in the church that has a beef with her. However, he dies. So,
Oh,
not really a
darn.
problem for her anymore. I know. Sorry about that. And like I said, he's a pain in her side. So, you know, this basically gives her all the freedom and powers that she's hoping for. And she does want to marry. So she starts looking for her next husband. And here's kind of my favorite part. Many suitors come from far and wide. One is claimed to have died of a broken heart on the way home after her polite decline.
I love that. I love that.
Right? Oh, she told me no.
Which
I will
really
perish.
means that he died in a bar brawl. But,
Probably.
it's like, well, what do we tell the king and queen? It was a broken heart. Yeah.
It just gave out, ma'am.
Ah,
Um, Whew, I am gonna be in so much trouble. I
right?
lost my boss today. Um, a, a thing that I think is entirely wild, I've never heard of happening before. Muslim men, like more than one, were absolutely willing to convert from Islam to the Georgian Orthodox Church to marry her. And I think that's so worth mentioning because we know from history how often that doesn't happen, right?
I mean, I don't know for sure just because I don't study a lot of Muslim history. And I now realize that that is a whole. So I don't feel confident in saying yes or no, but I'm like, you know what? I haven't heard of that before, but that I don't feel like that's anything to hang my hat on.
I gotcha. Yeah. Which is cool because the next guy, and probably the most entertaining suitor she had, and I'm probably gonna butcher his name, but I'm sure gonna try, he's called the Rum Sultan.
The rum
Runkin
sultan.
Aladdin.
I
The
like
Rum
him already.
Sultan. No, you don't.
Oh,
Oh, well, maybe you do because he's quite entertaining. His name is Runkin Aladdin, and he begins his letter, P.S. He is asking for her hand in marriage, in this dreamy fashion. Every woman, and I quote, is feeble-minded. End quote.
okay. Boy,
And then,
solid start.
really, he's winning. And then his envoy makes things worse by mentioning that the marriage would only be guaranteed if she converts to Islam. Otherwise, he'll still take her in marriage, but she'll simply be one of his concubines. Yeah. So Tamar, being the amazing individual she is, nicely dismisses them, but not before one of her courtiers allegedly hits Runkin's courtier hard enough that he passes out. And when the courtier finally comes to, Tamar sends him back with a message that she didn't care to marry Runkin and that she would in the end defeat him. And that she did at the Battle of Bosiazi.
Dang. Her Batch.com profile has got to be a bit,
Something, right?
right?
Okay, now, I don't know much about this woman, but now enter her ever wise Aunt Rusidan, who was not once but twice married to a Muslim sultan who both died within months of their marriage.
Coincidence? I think not.
Cersei? I think so. Anyway,
I bet she
she
had a grandmother like mine who was like, the first marriage, marry for money. Neither her or I followed that advice, but here we are.
you know, what are you gonna do, right? So she has a suggestion, and she matches Tamar with a gentleman called David Soslan. And in 1189, she marries him. Now, he is a prince from Alina, which is in modern day Iran. And his people are a story for a different day, which I assure you that I will tell you one day because they are actually one of my, probably my number one favorite ancient people group outside of Egypt.
I've
But I'm
never
not
heard
going
of
to tell you
them.
their name. You haven't. And I am so excited to tell you that story, but that's not for this day. So,
Tease, you
David,
tease.
I know, right? David proves to be a more than capable man and didn't mind carrying the title of king consort because he's a baller, just like Tamar.
Because he's screwing the queen.
Like, what does he care, right? He's living his best life.
Right.
So he serves her well. He leads her armies on the battlefield. And I'd like to take this moment to point out that unlike many of the other ladies we talk about on the show, she is not known to have ridden into battle. And I was like, wow,
Okay.
wild.
You
This is
mentioned that. It's
new.
like, yeah, we do cover a lot of like I lead from the front. I do my
Yeah.
own sword fights.
Yeah, she led from the monastery. She would travel with the armies and pray for the armies in like every church along the way. And nearby monasteries and, holy places, she would stop at all of them. And this was incredibly good for the locals, right? So the church benefits every time the armies go to war because she goes to pray. And wherever she goes to the end of Georgia. So, like, the last holy place in Georgia is where she stays, and then she sends the armies on. The armies, however, come back with all kinds of bountiful treasure, and the churches on the way home get it, which I think is
Okay.
amazing. And that's just one of her, like, how do I want to put this? Because we are dealing with a time where you can't, oh, what's the word? Canonize, for lack of a better one, every action of a person because they still believed in like slavery and some, not awesome things like castrating and blinding
You
your
know what?
enemies.
People are people, and there's everybody has a dark past, right?
Right,
George
and you've got to
Washington
take the
was
good with the bad.
was a monster in his own right.
So there you have it, right? Like she did some bad things, or she was it's part of an institution that did bad things. She
Right.
actually did not allow execution or whipping during her reign. Now that does not account for rebels. Like if you're causing a coup or an uprising, you're out of that mercy right there. But needless to say, she's all about giving back to the people. She's a patron of all the holy places, as well as education, art, and she felt it was her duty not just as a Christian, but as a ruler to give back. So she would go so far to give from her own personal things, like her own shoes or things she made herself to those in need, along with her financial contributions to the people. There were roads built, waterways, and other infrastructures attended to under her leadership that continued to usher in that time of greatness for all of Georgia. But we got to switch gears right back 180 to war. So worldhistory.org sheds some really interesting light on the state of the world at the time. And it basically says that in 1187, Saladin, are you familiar with Saladin?
I have heard of him, but being a margarita into this, I do not feel confident in telling you my knowledge about him.
Okay, so I'll just give you a quick little synopsis of him. He's the founder of the Abbasid dynasty, and he hails from a Kurdish family. He's the first sultan of both Egypt and Syria. And he's an important figure of the Third Crusade. Basically, he spearheads the Muslim military effort against the Crusaders. And at the height of his power, his realm spanned Egypt, Syria, Upper Mesopotamia, the Hijaz, Yemen, and Nubia. And he had retaken Jerusalem from the Crusaders. So, like, Saladin is the dude, right? Like, He is out for all the things. So, with his power and him on the rise, Tamar is looking out and she decides this guy could be potentially an issue. She sends two diplomatic missions to him, which secure the safety of Georgia's Monastery of the Cross and an exemption from taxation in exchange for peace between Georgia and Saladin state. So she's like, "Yeah, we can make this work." Now, it should be said though that this is not the first time the two rulers come to some sort of peaceful agreement. It seems that more than maybe more than twice, beneficial peaceful agreements come to both sides. Once before in 1185, excuse me, 1885, good God. We're a whole few hundred years off on that. 1185, Saladin sends ambassadors to the Georgian royal court to request peace. So this guy who is like out on the warpath is like, let's choose peace with these guys. Let's lay down our weapons. Tamar agrees not to attack the territories that are under his control. And with that, the major subject of negotiations between Tamar and the Sultan Saladin was the great city of Alat, which was under his control at the time. And it appears that neither side broke the peace treaty, and relations between the Kingdom of Georgia and the Sultanate of Egypt remained peaceful. And I think that is so important because, like I mentioned earlier, her predecessors were so good at living on both sides. Like,
Mm,
you know what I mean? And she clearly looked back and saw that and was like, yeah, here's the thing. I see in him like a worthy opponent. And
yeah.
I we can come to peaceful agreement and make this work to the benefit of both of our people. And they do more than once. And I think that's so worth mentioning. So, peace is secured in the south, but, war is going to erupt in the west because Yuri's back, the former
Oh,
husband. Yeah,
yeah. The ex
yeah,
from
love that
hell.
guy. He sure is. He just will not take those divorce papers. Keeps forgetting to sign them and put them in the mail. He shows up to the Turkish Esrem. His Georgian supporters, led by Guzan of Tau, come out to greet him and they escort him across the border, at which point they crown him king at the royal palace of Gigeti, which is like the biggest insult to Queen Tamar because
Yeah. Because she's already wearing the stupid crown.
not only that, but this is like the second largest city in her kingdom. And so
Oh,
it serves as like the second royal palace, right? Like that's the other seat of power. And she's insulted that they would put anybody other than her own family line on what they consider to be the throne of David. And I'm not just saying like the throne of David, her ancestor. I'm saying like the throne of David. Like that's how seriously they took it, like biblical
David
David.
from the Bible. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Traces his
so
line
she's
to
like,
Jesus.
right. And she's like, oh hell no, he is not worthy. Like, put it down, go away, back off. And she initially sends negotiations, but then her loyalist army just defeats the rebels in the field. When the rebels are
So wait. You
surrounded,
send enough negotiators that they just wipe out the opposing army?
I
I'm
mean, she
calling
sends
bullshit.
initially, no, I said initially she sends negotiators, but then her loyalist army just defeats the rebels. They're like, we're not playing this negotiation thing. We're done ski. Like,
I'm just
we're
saying,
over peace with this
if
guy.
if you have enough people going into a negotiation to wage war, I don't feel it's negotiation.
I took that when I learned that as she first tried peace and then let the army go.
Okay, all right.
Like in steps, not that they all came at once.
Okay, not
Um,
here's 5,000 or 50,000 of my best negotiators with
with
swords
spears. Yeah. Yeah,
on
exactly.
horseback.
In fact, in the newest armor, um, so the rebels that did surrender, she shows mercy and it becomes very characteristic of her. Yuri was once again sent back to exile in
Now, why
Constantinople.
doesn't she behead him? Oh,
Hold, please.
okay. I
So,
like
like I
this
said, he's sent
transition.
back, right? He's sent back to Constantinople. The rebels that are involved, they lose their lands and their titles, but they get to keep their heads, so that's a bonus. When Guzan of Tau tries to rebel again, David, her husband's David Solasan, who has no qualms with being the king consort, he has him blinded before Tamar can even grant him clemency. She's like, nope, he's done. We're
But do they castrate
sorry you
him?
didn't get my text. It doesn't say. I don't think they did.
Hmm.
I
I'm just
think he
saying, if we
just,
did it earlier, I feel like we're skipping a step.
you know, probably. You're probably right. So, about this time, Georgia is once again secure, and with a little bit of peace and free time in 1192, Tamar gives birth to the future King George IV. You know,
Oh.
the whole reason they wanted her to marry in the first place was so they could secure her dynasty, right? So now she has a male heir. And like all husbands, Dave goes out to celebrate by launching two military campaigns.
That's what my husband did. I put a
Right?
baby
Like,
girl in his hands and he waged war.
yeah, on the moon. Here we go.
Right.
Like, yeah. So he launches two campaigns. One, he captures the city of Bardavi, the old capital of Albania in the eastern Caucasus, and Esrum. And in response, the Caliph of Baghdad declared a jihad of all Muslims against Georgia. So that's a bit problematic. Nasrat al-Din Akbar, a Muslim ruler of the Eldridge dynasty in Azerbaijan, led the attack, occupying Georgia's allies, the Muslim state of Stravan, around the same time. Okay, do you remember her loser first husband Yuri? The one we were
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah. The one that we
Yeah, I
should have
bet you
just,
thought
blind
castrated
as
and
he
thrown in the
was, that
dungeon.
he still acts a fool.
Oh, so he is not blinded. His guy that brought him into the country, Guzan, was
Oh, dang
blinded.
it. See, that's the
Yuri
thing.
escapes.
Why
Yeah.
you got to do the X.
Well, you'll
Feed
see
him to
what happens.
snakes, something.
Give him the old Ragnar Lothbrok.
Right.
Throw him in a
Look, I
snake
mean, I'm
pit.
not
Yeah.
picky.
Just be done with him, right? Like, yeah, take him off the census. Well, he arrives and he pledges his loyalty to Akbar. But it's
Of
cool
course he
because he was
does.
right. Well, in 1193, which is, you know, probably less than a year later at this point, he's defeated by a Georgian duke, and we never hear from him again. Like he just disappears from history. So my guess is, and I have a couple
He
theories:
dies. He
A,
dies.
he dies, or B, he finally figures it out, just go lives in a cave somewhere and like minds his business. Like he is not getting that power back. Sorry, bud, you done. My guess is he dies. So Yuri's
Bro got a
defeated.
paper
That
cut
guy's
prior to antibiotics and then rots away of syphilis.
God,
How
I
are
hope
those two
so.
things related? I don't know, but syphilis.
Syphilis was on the paper that gave him the paper cut.
I don't
I'm
know
here
if
to
it's
help this story along.
okay. I mean, I don't know if that's how you can transmit it. I'm sure maybe.
He got it on his tongue.
Carry on, carry on. We've already checked my boxes.
Yeah, he's dead. As far as I'm concerned, he's gone. And to celebrate, she gives birth in 1194 to her daughter, named after her aunt, Rusadan.
Hell yes.
Right? Okay. So, there's a little bit more war. So the main Muslim army under Akbar faces off against her husband Dave, and at the battle of, excuse me,
Now,
at
is
the
it
battle
really
of
Dave? I feel
Sancourt,
like it was David and
it's David.
okay, we've
It's
reduced it.
David.
I
Yeah,
just want to make sure that
yeah.
I know so that I
It's just
don't
Dave.
search like husband Dave and
Dave.
then I get really upset that I can't find it. Like if I looked up Lizzie 1, I doubt I would find stuff.
Now I want to try, and I'll get back to you on that.
If you research
So
Lizzie 1, please email us.
what did you get? We are dying to know. I feel like if you Googled husband Dave, you're gonna get some LinkedIn
Right?
profile.
Right. Like I'm a stay-at-home dad who supports his executive wife.
Yep, that's
This
exactly
is
what you're
my
gonna
wife,
get.
Ethel. She's great at her job. She's a creative
And Ethel's
director.
like, Yep. Yep. She makes $7 million a month, and I teach yoga on Tuesdays. So the two armies come face to face at the Battle of Shamkor in 1195. Dave is victorious, and even the caliphal banners were captured, which I think is so freaking cool. And they were given by Tamar to the Georgian monastery of Kalikukani, and I think I said that wrong. Khakashuli. Kakulai,
Either way, what a move. You take from one
right?
religion and give to another.
I As a gift, I brought you this flag. I think love that for her. So the victorious Georgian army, they march on Ganja, capturing the city and giving it to
They
the
march on
to
where?
Amar. Ganja, Ganja.
I just want you to know I was listening.
You did so good. And I just want you to know I was hoping you didn't notice. So they capture it to the city. They capture that city and they give it to Amar Merhem, and he's the brother of Akbar, which I think is interesting, to govern as a Georgian vassal. So
So I'm
like,
assuming Akbar was actually, he was a good dude in this.
so they're kind of going back and forth, right? Like, I think that initially Akbar was, I mean, out for blood, if you want to call it that, because you got to remember, like, a jihad has been called on them. And
But that, I mean,
I'm
look, my
scrolling up
sister's
in my
called for all
notes.
kinds of things. That doesn't mean that I necessarily follow her every move, jihad or not.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess that's true.
I shouldn't compare my
I'm sorry.
relationship
Okay,
with
so
my
no.
sister to an entire religion and a holy war. I should walk that
So
back.
rewind. It was the Caliph in Baghdad who declares the jihad. Akbar led the armies.
Okay.
Okay. But so interesting to note there because like you said, he could have been a good dude. The governorship was given to his brother. One of the things that's very characteristic of her reign is that she would place the locals. Like she wouldn't conquer a region and then give it to her noblemen. She would have it continue to be ruled by the people there, which I think is genius if you're trying to create loyalty, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
so that is worth noting. However, Akbar has his brother poisoned and he manages to recapture Ganja. So
I mean,
maybe Akbar's
ganja's
not the best.
desirable.
But the Georgian army marches victoriously south, even capturing important trading cities. And though their success supposedly led Akbar to drink himself to death, Ganja did resist recapture. So
Wait
I
a
think
minute.
that's interesting to note.
Do they
Yeah.
drink in Muslim countries?
Well, he did.
Okay. I I say that and I'm like, I don't know if they do. I
I think certain sects do. I think wine is something that they're very much allowed to partake in. I think that's it though. So at this point, Georgia is now at its greatest territorial expanse. They could be considered an empire.
the Quran explicitly forbids drinking.
Well, Akbar drunk himself to death.
Okay, carry on. Carry on.
He did not make it into Valhalla. Um,
That's we're mixing metaphors now.
that's what I'm good at, yo. So I'm gonna end the bulk of the middle of her life saying that her kingdom is now the size of an empire. It's in its golden age. She is, for the most part, ruling her people peacefully. She also tames a lion cub as a pet.
I expect nothing less. I can't say that
Me
I would
either.
have anticipated that sentence, but okay.
That's why I saved it. There's some wonderings about why she did that. One reason is
Well,
perhaps to
because she
demonstrate her
could.
power,
It
right?
was
That's exactly
there.
what I was gonna say. She does it because she can.
If I
Um,
was remotely close to a lion cub, I wouldn't do it to demonstrate my power. I would do it because it's friend shaped.
I want to pet it so bad and boop the nose.
Right.
Yeah,
Have
I
you
mean that's what
seen
I'm doing it for.
have you seen the TikTok profile, Russian family that has a cougar? And
I
you
think
see
so.
this killing machine come over and do head pushes and like
Ugh,
nudge the man to wake him up, and you're thinking, his ilk
yeah, I
has
want
eaten
that.
many hikers, many hikers, has jumped out of trees, snapped the necks of some woman just doing her 2 mile trail jog, drug her into the bushes, and feasted on her for days. And
He just wants
you're
pets.
throwing empty Sprite bottles at it to chase around the house.
Yeah, I'm
I
here
need
for
one.
it.
I need one.
Same. I could not agree with you more.
I like how I just say
You know,
deadly, deadly, deadly. Yes, please. This is how I clock out.
I'll take two. My toxic trait is believing I'd survive. I'm fine with trying though. If that's how I go out, I went out happy. In pain, but happy, you know?
Right. Like, yeah, predictably.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it doesn't matter. She has a lion, and that's really all that matters. I too want a lion. The exact cause and date of Queen Tamar's death are not known for sure. Some say that she died in 1213 near Tilbisi, Georgia, and her body was taken to the Glenty Monastery where she was buried with her ancestors.
Mm,
There are some interesting legends that surround her death, such as one that says 12 coffins were secretly taken in different directions and buried so that no one would ever know where her real tomb was. I don't really buy that one because I fully believe she was put in her family's with her ancestors. That makes sense.
right.
She is remembered as one of the greatest rulers of Georgia and is a saint of the Georgian Orthodox Church. She leaves behind a legacy of political, military, and cultural achievements and a strong sense of national identity that is still relevant today.
I love her.
Ugh, it just gets me.
Now, I
The
will say her
literature,
sainthood is very different than, say, Saint Olga of Kiev.
yeah, but you know what? I think they would have been besties.
Yeah, probably. Two strong female
Yeah,
rulers.
not putting up with the men's crap.
Yeah, but I will say that
She was more
your
merciful than
yeah,
Olga.
your
Olga.
your girl actually showed mercy, and Olga was like, "Why don't you take a bath in my bathhouse? Come this way."
Do please
I know.
bring your boats. Uh, they were besties. That's all I'm gonna believe.
Here's the deal. Your girl was to you as Olga Kiev is to me. And so best friends
The-
they shall be. But, here I am. I'm gonna burn down the bathhouse. And you might grant mercy.
Depending on the
Pick your
day.
pick your saint.
Yeah, do what you're gonna do. We're here for it, right?
Right.
It's a
And
little column A, a little column B, right? Both
you
is
know,
good.
your dice is going to be like, yeah, you gotta roll above this to get mercy, roll below that to be castrated with your eyes gouged out. And Teresa, yeah, Teresa just chose violence.
She woke up that way. Yeah.
Roll for exit strategy.
I'll roll for initiative and call it good. So that's her story. Like I said, the piece of literature that I mentioned at the beginning is still really relevant to their people today. And when I was learning about it, it mirrored the events of the time in her life so clearly. For example, the women have to have a say in word in their marriages, and she should simply rule because she's your daughter, not because she's female or male. Like,
Mm,
these are all themes taking place within this just epic piece of poetry, right? And it's written during her reign.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to see the correlation. And I am so 100% for it. After she dies, her son takes over, George the Fourth, and then later her
Now,
daughter
I'm
will
assuming
rule.
Jorge. Not, it wasn't even Jorge. I just renamed it
Georgie.
again. Yorkie.
Georgie, yeah.
I was just like,
Georgie the
it's
Fourth.
George, but not George. And that's how my brain retained it.
It's Jesus, and that's what we're calling it. I feel like this story had so many words that could have come from another language that I was like, wait a minute, is this Hawaiian? This is definitely Spanish.
Mm.
But I would like to end on the note that son's, after her son Gheorghe died, her daughter ruled as a sole monarch. Hmm.
Whoa.
Yep. And that was the end of the Georgian Golden Era. After that, the Mongols came and sadly destroyed much of the literature, and I assume a great bulk of the history of the people as well. So we don't know a ton, but there's my story on Queen Tamar of Georgia,
I love her. I love her so, so
right?
much. And
I was so excited to find her, to learn of her. I
ah,
have a picture.
yes. Pictures,
You're gonna be
pictures,
impressed.
pictures. Okay, so she is showing me a clear, well, first off, a background of a Vulcan doing a cooking show. But on,
That's sorry. That's Spock and Captain Pike.
I can't
You just
see,
can't see Captain Pike.
and so I just see Vulcan. I don't, it's out of context. Anyhow, um, what we should be focusing on is Angie's notes, and that's what I'm going to focus on from here on out. But you have a clear medieval portrait of a woman standing in the archway. There is a mountain range behind her. She is wearing a very ornate crown and robe. She has a piece of fabric underneath her chin, like a chin strap, but it is done a bit more
I think it's like a
innately.
veil, right?
Veil.
Like it goes, yeah, it
Yeah.
goes from
And
the
then oh
sides
it
and
does
then
come
the
to the top. Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, so veil. I typically don't see the veil with a crown, so it was, I went to chin
Weird.
strap. I
I'm
blame the
good. I mean,
margarita.
you're that's fair. I'll let you have it.
Okay. And I keep wanting to scroll down on your photo,
Oh,
even though I
sorry.
don't have control over your screen. Okay, so it is a floor length gown with billowy arms. It's basically a giant kaftan. Like if Muumuus could monarch, that's what this is. I just broke you.
That is the name of this episode.
If Muumuus could monarch. I mean, but that's what this is, right? Like it is a very ornate Muumuu. It is flowy. Everything
It's
about this says I work from home and I'm not wearing a bra.
I will never be able to unsee any medieval art any other way. If
For my
Moomoo's
next
could
trick.
monarch, I'm, I'm done.
Are you crying?
I'm trying to get it together.
And here I'm the one that's drunk.
Uh, Imagine if I had that margarita.
We would
Oh
be in
my
the hurt
God.
locker.
My face is leaking.
And if you've enjoyed this episode of Face Leaking, rate, review, subscribe. I mean, I say that jokingly, but the truth is, I don't think we have time for my story. So I think we get to like put mine on the shelf for next time. Um, and I don't hate any of this. I think all of this is fantastical.
I could have probably done another whole episode on the like middle part of her life.
I mean, this is what happened when I did like Fred, like we were talking about Queens, and I brought up Fredegund and Brunhild. I literally could that could have been a 3 episode.
Yeah, I mean,
When I was
They're
like, oh
such
crap, 12
badasses.
pages of notes. Like I gotta edit this down.
Yeah, no. I loved that story. It's one of my favorites.
Have I sent you that book?
No, not yet.
Oh, I really should have put it in the package with your bill, your script.
It's amazing. It's sitting right next to me. You can't see it, but it's right here on my
It
desk.
it'll go on the wall and then it'll be available for your viewing pleasure. And that's fantastical. But
It
anyhow,
is.
if you are wanting to know, we publish these things weekly because we literally have nothing else to do. Our lives is consuming these stories and then regurgitating. And we would love it if your life included listening to regurgitations. Let us mama bird these stories to you. And on that
I
note,
will only be doing it in a moo from now on.
and that's all we ask.
You know?
And on that note, goodbye.
Bye.